In 2009, BlackBerry was the most valuable company in Canadian history. Its stock had risen over 1,000% in 5 years. Its devices were carried by Barack Obama, hundreds of world leaders, and roughly 85 million subscribers worldwide. By 2016, its global market share had fallen to less than 1%. That is not a business decline. That is a controlled demolition, except the people holding the detonator kept insisting the building was fine. To understand what happened, you need to go back to the beginning, not to a garage in California, to Waterloo, Ontario, 1984. A University of Waterloo dropout named Mike Lazaridis co-founded a company called Research in Motion, RIM for short. For the first decade, RIM made forgettable products, wireless display technology, network equipment, the kind of business that exists but nobody photographs. Then in 1999, they released the BlackBerry 850, a two-way pager that could send and receive email wirelessly. It was not glamorous. It was not beautiful. It was, however, genuinely useful. Corporate America noticed immediately. Banks, law firms, and government agencies began buying BlackBerry devices by the thousands. The device earned a nickname almost instantly, Crackberry. Because once you had one, you apparently could not stop using it. The physical keyboard was the product. It was fast, tactile, and accurate in a way that no touchscreen of the era could match. Executives could send emails from airports, from cars, from boardrooms without opening a laptop. In the early 2000s, that was not a feature. That was a superpower. The numbers reflected the obsession. By 2007, RIM's revenue had grown to approximately $3 billion, up from $306 million just 4 years earlier. The company had captured over 40% of the U.S. smartphone market. Mike Lazaridis and co-CEO Jim Balsillie were on the cover of every business magazine that would have them. And there were many. Jim Balsillie was the sales and strategy mind. Mike Lazaridis was the engineer. Together they ran RIM under a dual CEO structure, a governance arrangement that, in retrospect, was optimized for producing disagreements at precisely the moments when speed was most critical. On January 9, 2007, Steve Jobs walked onto a stage in San Francisco and introduced the iPhone. He described it as a phone, an iPod, and an internet communicator. The audience applauded. The mobile industry quietly began to panic. Mike Lazaridis reportedly watched the keynote and told colleagues it would never work. The battery life would be terrible. The touchscreen keyboard would be unusable. Carriers would never support that much data traffic. He was right about the battery life. He was wrong about everything else. This is a critical distinction that the subsequent 7 years of RIM's strategy never fully absorbed. Jim Balsillie was similarly unimpressed. He reportedly told a journalist that the iPhone was merely a niche product, a luxury item for consumers. RIM's customers, he argued, were enterprise clients, corporations, governments, institutions. These customers needed security, reliability, and a keyboard. They did not need apps. They did not need a touchscreen. This analysis was not entirely wrong. It was, however, missing something important. The definition of a BlackBerry customer was about to change whether RIM planned for it or not, because consumers were also people who went to work. And they were beginning to prefer their personal iPhone to their company-issued BlackBerry. Between 2007 and 2009, Apple released the App Store. Overnight, the iPhone became not just a phone but a platform. Developers flooded in. By mid-2009, the App Store had over 65,000 applications. BlackBerry's equivalent, App World, launched in April 2009 with around 1,000. RIM's internal processes for approving third-party applications were described by developers as slow, opaque, and punishing. The platform gap was widening every quarter, and RIM's response was to double down on what had already worked. New BlackBerry hardware, incremental software improvements, a loyalty to the physical keyboard that bordered on philosophical. One former executive later described internal debates about touchscreens as genuinely contentious. as though abandoning the keyboard would be a betrayal of the company's identity. In 2010, RIM released the BlackBerry Torch, a touchscreen device with a slide-out physical keyboard, a compromise. It was the product equivalent of a company arguing with itself and agreeing to split the difference. Reviewers noted that the touchscreen was sluggish and the overall experience felt unfinished. It sold modestly. It changed nothing. Then came the decision that defines this story. In 2010, RIM announced the BlackBerry Playbook, a tablet designed to compete with the iPad. The Playbook launched in April 2011, priced at $499. It could not send or receive email natively. It could not access BlackBerry Messenger. It required a tethered BlackBerry phone to perform basic functions. Let that sit for a moment. RIM, a company whose entire identity was built on wireless email, released a tablet that could not do email. The board approved the launch timeline. Of course they did. The Playbook was critically savaged. Analysts called it half-finished. RIM eventually took an inventory write-down of approximately $485 million on unsold Playbook units. The product was discontinued by 2014. The iPad, meanwhile, sold over 15 million units in its first 9 months alone. By 2011, the internal situation at RIM was deteriorating in ways that were becoming visible from the outside. A service outage in October 2011 knocked BlackBerry users across Europe, the Middle East, Africa, and eventually North America offline for up to 4 days. An estimated 70 million users were affected. The cause was traced to a core network switch failure that cascaded through redundant systems that were not, in practice, redundant. The outage was a technical failure, but it landed at the worst possible moment, precisely when enterprise customers were beginning to formally evaluate whether BlackBerry was still the secure, reliable choice it had always claimed to be. The answer many of them reached was no. The financial data from this period is not subtle. RIM's market share in the U.S. fell from roughly 44% in 2009 to approximately 16% by the end of 2011. Net income had already begun to collapse. In fiscal year 2012, RIM reported a net loss of $518 million, the first annual loss in the company's history as a public company. In January 2012, Mike Lazaridis and Jim Balsillie resigned as co-CEOs. Thorsten Heinz, a German-born executive who had joined RIM in 2007, was named the new CEO. Heinz immediately announced that there was nothing fundamentally wrong with the company's strategy. He described the existing approach as sound. There is a particular kind of courage required to take the helm of a sinking company and announce that the ship is fine. Thorsten Heinz had it. The company's last genuine attempt at salvation was BlackBerry 10, a completely rebuilt operating system designed from the ground up to compete with iOS and Android. It was, by most technical accounts, genuinely impressive. It launched in January 2013. It was approximately 3 years too late. By the time BlackBerry 10 arrived, enterprise IT departments had already restructured their mobile device management policies to accommodate iPhones and Android devices. The window during which a new BlackBerry OS could have shifted purchasing decisions had closed. The BB10 launch generated initial interest, but did not reverse the subscriber decline. RIM, now officially rebranded as BlackBerry Limited, reported a staggering net loss of nearly $5.9 billion in fiscal year 2014. Thorsten Heinz was replaced in November 2013, after less than 2 years. He departed with a severance package reportedly worth approximately $22 million. The board, in announcing his departure, thanked him for his contributions. Of course they did. By 2016, BlackBerry's global smartphone market share was measured in fractions of a percent. The company licensed its brand to third-party manufacturers and pivoted entirely to enterprise software and security services. It survives today in a form Mike Lazaridis would almost certainly not recognize. So what is the actual lesson here? Because it is not simply that BlackBerry missed the touchscreen. Plenty of companies miss a product cycle and recover. The lesson is what they did after they missed it. BlackBerry's leadership confused deep expertise with infallibility. They understood wireless email better than anyone on Earth, and they allowed that genuine competence to convince them that they also understood what customers would want next. Those are not the same thing. They were never the same thing. The most dangerous moment for any dominant company is not when a competitor appears. It is the moment leadership decides the competitor is not worth taking seriously. RIM had roughly 2 years, from 2007 to 2009, during which a serious, urgent response to the iPhone might have preserved their position. They spent those years telling themselves they were fine. 85 million subscribers, 44% market share. The phone of presidents. Gone, not because the technology was impossible, but because the people in charge of the technology were more committed to being right than to being relevant. That distinction cost them everything. Next time, the inside story of how Nokia went from selling rubber boots to owning the mobile phone market, and then lost all of it faster than anyone thought possible. Subscribe for more hidden empires.